It's been a while. Sup, y'all? It's me. It's your boy Asmongold, and today I want to talk to you all about the state of battle for Azeroth. Now, it's been a while since I've made a video. I know that. I just want to address the elephant in the room, and I'm sorry. Maybe I'll make more soon, but it depends on how things go. The truth is that it's been kind of frustrating for me to make videos because I really don't like the direction the game has gone in recently, and it just seems to be getting worse. I want to talk to you all about why, and I also want to say that in my over 12 years of playing this game, there has not been a single expansion, including Warlords of Draenor, that has gotten a more negative reception than Battle for Azeroth. If I go on Reddit, people are complaining. If I go into general forums, well, they're always complaining, but they're complaining now too, and there's a lot more of them. If I go on Twitter, they're complaining. Any place that I can receive feedback about the game or view how people are seeing the game is overwhelmingly negative. All of the videos that people have been making have been overwhelmingly negative, or they've just been completely uninformed. It seems like there's a lot of people that don't like Battle for Azeroth, and I think there's a very big reason for that. Did I say Barry? I don't know if I did. Is because people are realizing that they're rats in a Skinner box. And it's been a while. It's been, I feel like I'm the old crazy guy. Well, I do feel that way, but I feel like that way even more with WoW. I feel like I'm the old crazy guy, the kooky crazy guy who's predicted the end of the world, and now people are finally starting to wake up and realize that I wasn't wrong. It's in Mists of Pandaria, they introduced this Titan Forging, not Titan Forging, sorry, that wasn't until Legion. The Thunder Forging, and then War Forging, and then War Forging with sockets and WoD. And then I was telling people like, yo, this is bullshit. They're just doing this to extend the time that you play the game. This isn't fun at all. Who has fun whenever you get a Warforged item? Is it more fun to get a Warforged item than it was to just get the baseline item? Probably not. No, they're doing this just to extend your playtime. And obviously, yes, RNG is good to an extent, but there's a huge fucking difference. There's a world of difference between an 8% item drop and a 0.00008% item drop with Max Titan Forge, the socket that you want, and also the tertiary that you'd like to see. All of those things having to happen and all of those stars having to align is much different and a completely different world than just having to have an item drop that has an 8% drop chance from a boss back in Cataclysm or Wrath of the Lich King or any time before that. So the idea that they're similar is completely fucking ridiculous. Now, going back to what I was saying is that, and then in Legion, so we got the legendary system, that was fun, and then you had Titan Forging, which is so much more fun. And then, now in Battle for Azeroth, they did remove Weapon Titan Forging, which was good, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, you still have the normal Titan Forging. The truth is that there is no sort of power gain that a player can have that is exclusive to that player being good at the game. There is nothing that a Mythic Raider can have that makes their character more powerful that another random player cannot receive just by being lucky. Getting lucky, it doesn't feel good. It's just like, oh wow, I'm lucky. Blizzard has traded out fulfillment. Blizzard has traded out being able to come home after a week of farming, being able to come home and know that you have enough arena points to buy your Season 4 mace. I'll tell you guys a story real quick before I get into this, and this will be a way for you guys to understand where I'm coming from. There was my first semester in community college, all right? It was a bad time, all right? It was long enough ago that it was in Burning Crusade. I got my statistics test back, and I looked at that 57, or is it 37? I don't know. I failed. I dropped the class. It didn't matter. By the way, I came back a few years later. I got an A in it. I'm not that stupid. But the point is, I got the test, and I took that 57. I took that 37 with a smile because I knew later on that day I was going to go home and buy my Season 4 mace. The idea, the fulfillment of being able to get things in WoW is completely fucking gone. They have traded the fulfillment. They have traded the satisfaction of the game for excitement and gambling. The fact is that there are so many fucking games that have turned into basically just being a slot machine. And just infinitely more and more carrots that they're going to put in front of you that are ever increasing in the velocity and like the rate that you have to get them in, right? And eventually, you give people too many fucking carrots and they're going to get fed up. And that's what's happening. That is what's happened. It started happening in Mists of Pandaria. It started happening in WoD. People really didn't like it in WoD. That was because the expansion sucked. Legion was actually pretty good, so people didn't care as much because the rest of the gameplay was fun. And then, surprise, add in a GCD change and a couple of other bullshit mechanics that nobody wanted, like Azerite gear and removing the legendary affixes and the different traits, and not adding a new a new talent ring, and then basically being able to level up your character, which just feels like more like you're leveling down your character. I feel like I'm going back down to level 100 than not up to 120. And at the same time, yeah, people are getting fucking tired of this shit. They realize they're rats, and as I said, rats in a Skinner box. This is variable reinforcement schedule. This is psychology 101, psychological tricks. And the fact is that, man, like, people don't like this shit. They don't like it. And I think the problem, man, I use a metaphor here. The problem isn't the tree, okay? The problem isn't the leaves, it's not the branches, it's not even the trunk, it is the seed. The problem is the seed in which the game has grown out of. The philosophy that Blizzard has used to craft these recent expansions has been built entirely around excitement and not fulfillment. There is nothing that you can work towards anymore. There is nothing that matters anymore that you can work towards. Getting your neck a high level, who gives a fuck? Doesn't matter. Wow, you can go unlock an Azerite trait that you already had whenever you were in blues. It's like you're progressively moving backwards with your Azerite gear, and then you finally get a piece of gear that, by the way, you have no control over at all. Why did Blizzard think this was a good idea? Because, again, they're obsessed with RNG, and it's like, I just don't understand how it's gotten this bad. I really don't. I don't understand how the developers have gotten so out of touch with the game. And I hate to say this, man, but I want to know, I want to see the armories of these developers. I want to see their parsers. I want to see how they play. I want to see what they're good at. I want to see, what their achievements are, what their experience with the game is, because it certainly fucking seems like they don't even play. How the fuck can you think the legendary system in Legion was a good idea? How the fuck can you think something like the Azerite system, especially on launch, was okay? And let's be honest. I mean, yeah, Battle for Azeroth, the joke, beta for Azeroth, yeah, it had a lot of bugs in it. I get that. It had so many bugs it could be AQ. Haha. It's just, I don't understand. Like, to me, the bug issue is not that bad of a thing. And I do want to just mention that, like, right as an aside right now, I don't really give a fuck about the bugs. What I do care about is the class design decisions. And I care about the intentional things that are wrong, not the things that are on accident. But I'll have to, I guess, for a lot of the bugs, we'll have to wait for them to manifest themselves in a Mythic Plus tournament for them to actually be able to be fixed. So anyway, going back to what I was saying about the seed. The seed in this game, the philosophy in this game, is all about excitement. It's all about random reward. It's about creating a uniform experience that all players go through without anybody being able to get too far ahead or anybody being able to get too far behind. It's about creating an experience that doesn't matter if you're an LFR raider, it doesn't matter if you don't raid at all. If you're stepping into a dungeon, you're stepping into a raid, you're stepping into the same raid, the same dungeon that the best player in the world is stepping into. There's no growth. There's no visual growth of your character. There's nothing that your character is getting because you're very good at the game. Except for cosmetic rewards that nobody gives a fuck about. Obviously, mounts are very important, which, by the way, Gahoon doesn't drop a mount. But for the most part, I mean, what really motivates most players is growth and power rewards for their character. Being able to have a visual representation of what they've achieved in the game. There are no visual representations for that people really care about anymore. You can do a little bit more damage, but again, that's also limited by RNG, because of course now you don't even have Mashed Glued anymore. So, and Blizzard, like, whoever the fuck thought of that should be fired. Like, I legitimately do not understand. As I said before, I want to know, like, do these people even raid? Do they even play the fucking game? These decisions seem like they're so out of touch that it seems like they were created out of a spreadsheet and not out of love for the game. They're making decisions based off of analytics and not off of enjoyment. They're making decisions based off of metrics and not out of fun. Like, what's fun about leveling up your necklace that does nothing? You can't even click on it. Nothing is fun about the necklace. Nothing is fun about losing your Azerite traits and then reclaiming them in a few weeks after, the throttling mechanism for the Azerite armor, the Azerite amount of like Azerite power that you get has brought you up to a point to where you're able to get that along with everybody else. There's nothing fulfilling about that. And that's really the issue, is that I feel like they've just removed all fulfillment from the game, and people are starting to realize this and are starting to ask themselves, why am I playing a gambling simulator? I might as well just buy a ticket to Las Vegas. This is ridiculous. So I feel like these developers, right, they don't understand. And then also, let me go back to this. The Azerite armor. I forgot who said this in the Q&A. This is just an unfortunate reality of the system. No, it's not, bro. Like, you made the system. You are literally God. You are God. You can change the system to be however you want. Don't tell me this is an unfortunate reality of a system that you have complete control over, that you can change and do whatever you want with. I'm not saying that they should delete Azerite armor. I would actually like them to make it work. But the idea that you can't change the system, this is just an unfortunate reality, is fucking bullshit. It just is. I'm sorry. Like, I'm so sick of getting these answers that basically you don't know what you want. And I think to an extent that's true, right? The stat templates in Legion. Players all wanted stat templates in Legion. Oh, we want it to be fair. We care about PvP for a fair and balanced experience. Meanwhile, people like me, like I said, man, people don't care about that. They want to get a new weapon and beat the shit out of somebody in 2 hits because they've spent more time playing the game. That's what it's always been about. It's always been about it's like the Star Wars thing, the master and the apprentice. The master with WoW, it's the neckbeard and the nub, right? The neckbeard has the power, the nub craves the power, the nub gets better, he beats the neckbeard, and the process repeats itself. That is a beautiful cycle of life in WoW. And now it doesn't matter if you're a neckbeard or a nub, because you're all going to look the same, and maybe you're going to do a little bit more DPS. It just doesn't make a difference at all. Oh, if you get lucky, though. The developers, I really feel like the problem is the developers have no way to communicate with the player base. They don't talk on Twitter. They don't read the general forums, thank God. They don't read Reddit. They don't watch the videos, or at least they don't care, trust me. They don't watch streams. They certainly don't watch streams. Trust me on that too. They just don't really care. These things, they don't matter to the developers. So they have no way to communicate with the player base. The developers never sit down, I don't think, or at least maybe some of them do, but it certainly doesn't seem that way. And they don't interface with the community. What happens is one fucking dipshit goes on Twitter and makes a personal attack on one of the developers. He's like, oh, you're fat. Or even worse, he does something like, oh, I'm going to attack you in real life. He makes a real life threat. And then the developer says, okay, well, I'm not going to interface with the community anymore. Well, yeah. Okay, let me just say, let me do the crazy, let me get on my soapbox and say that, yes, making personal attacks to people over a video game, especially if they're threats, yeah, it's fucking ridiculous. Nobody should do that. It should get banned from Twitter. It should get banned from whatever else. If the threat is credible, the police should go to his house and ask him why the fuck. They shouldn't put him in jail. They should put him in a mental institution because you're so fucking stupid that you're going to threaten somebody. You're going to threaten to kill somebody over a fucking video game. Like, the idea that this kind of stuff is acceptable is ridiculous. Of course it's not acceptable, but the idea that because a developer gets negative feedback on Twitter, because a developer gets, or a community manager, or somebody gets negative feedback on Twitter or somewhere else, means that they should just withdraw from the entire community is hurting everyone. And it's hurting, and it's making it harder for people to make the game better. It's making it harder for people to make what they love, World of Warcraft, that they've loved for some people over a decade, make the game into something that they can continue to love. So people that grow up and they play the game today can have the same experience that that person had, that I had back whenever I was 16 years old. That's what people want to have. And whenever you have people that just withdraw from the entire community just because of negative feedback, that's never going to happen. At this point, do we need community managers for the community managers? I hope not. So here's what I think Blizzard should do. They should create an official forum on their official websites, and it should be about feedback and suggestions, and it should be serious. No level 1 trolling, no trolling, period. No people posting just to be antagonistic or just to stoke the fire and just make people angry, but legitimate feedback from legitimate people that's well thought out. And anything that's not that gets deleted. It would be very simple for Blizzard to do that. They could curate the entire experience, and it would be a way for them to curate communication and be able to get that criticism and be able to act on it if they agree. But I think the problem also is that they simply do not agree. The players and the developers have two different visions for the game. And I think that's it's very clear evidenced by the fact that there are no vendors for gear in the game. Players have wanted PvP vendors back for years, and they haven't gotten them. Players have wanted different vendors for anything back, and they haven't gotten them. There's no Valor points, there's no Justice points, there's no sense of being able to work towards a reward nowadays, and everything in the game, again, is based completely on RNG. So the developers need to do a better job in talking with the community, realizing why the community wants this certain thing, and acting on it. Because at a certain point, the community are the people that keep the game alive, not necessarily the developers. They do, but it's a symbiotic relationship. And if the community isn't happy, then it's just going to make things worse. And the problem right now is that people feel like they're yelling into an abyss. They're yelling and they're not being heard by the developers. And what that has caused is it hasn't made them stop yelling. It's made them yell louder. It's made them be even more antagonistic. And it's created this adversarial relationship between the developers and between the players that's unhealthy for the entire game. And that's what's happened. I don't want to attack the developers. I don't hate the developers. I want to know why the fuck they're doing these things. And I want to be able to say, hey, well, what about this? What about this perspective? This doesn't feel good to me. Nothing feels good in the game anymore. Here's why. But I feel like if I make a post about that, if I talk about that, nothing changes. To an extent, I'm sure some of the developers do care, but it also seems like a lot of the game design decisions are being done for profit and not necessarily for fun. And here's a little bit of advice. If you're making a video game, if you can't explain a game design decision by anything else besides, well, we did this to retain players or we did this for profit, it's probably not a good game design decision. And that's exactly what's happened. A lot of the decisions that Blizzard has made have been transparently to extend game time. What they do is they add a system into the game, like the legendary system or like something else similar to that, and they make people farm it out in the most counterproductive way, or the most negative or the hardest to farm way. And then as more and more people drop off, they then add in the catch-up mechanisms and the quality of life increases afterwards, so then more people will continue to play. And what that does is it creates a feeling of futility. It creates a feeling of, why would I even want to try to farm out and get all of these items and do all of this stuff if I just know that Blizzard is going to make it easier later on? And I think it doesn't really affect people that are on the tail ends, but it affects a lot of the people that are in the middle. There's this myth that nobody, like the people that care about the game and want to be good at the game are like 5% of the player base. I think a lot of people that play WoW want to have a fulfilling and fun experience, and Battle for Azeroth is not delivering that. They have traded all of that fulfillment. They've traded all of that away for a feeling of gambling, for the excitement of gambling. And people are starting to realize that, and they're starting to wake up, and they're starting to say, hey, I'm not having fun. And I think that the only reason that it didn't happen in Legion is that all of the other content and all of the other gameplay in Legion was actually pretty good. And it really felt bad at the end of Legion that I was feeling like I was playing the good expansion before the bad expansion. And now that Battle for Azeroth is out, it seems like I was at least kind of right. PvP has been okay, but the entire PvE progression system is completely, it's just not fulfilling. It's not fun. They consolidated all of the armor sets to only be 4 different armor sets. It's like, if you don't like your armor, like the plate armor set, I mean, like the normal mode one, it looks like the guy's high. Like, I mean, the weird eyes, these weird gloves and like this weird kilt thing that he's got on, and the helmet looks stupid. Like, I don't like the set. It's creepy and weird. And it's like, usually I'm like, oh, I like the DK set, because, I used to be kind of an emo kid. And so, black stuff with skulls all over it sounds awesome to me. And I go and I look, and there's no DK set. I don't have that option. Now, this is only one issue, right? But the idea of being able to pursue rewards that make your character look cool does matter a lot. These things make a big difference. Look at how many people that played Classic WoW or played Burning Crusade, how many of them remember seeing somebody in Ironforge or Stormwind that had really cool gear on. The idea that that feeling is gone and that entire psychology is just gone in 15 years is untrue. There are a lot of people that, if the game was still functioning in the same way, would feel the same way about it now. I'm not saying that everything that was in Classic should come back to the game now, but there's got to be a little bit of an acknowledgement that some of the systems were actually pretty good. The other problem that I have here, like with Azerite armor specifically, is that Blizzard fundamentally disagrees with how the player base wants Azerite armor to work. And I think this has created a very, very bad dynamic. the player base does not necessarily want, it seems to me at least. This is based off of everything that I've read, streaming Warcraft every day, reading the websites all the time, etc., right? Am I speaking for the player base? No. I'm just speaking for what I've seen, and I've seen a lot. It does not seem like the player base enjoys having to randomly farm for Azerite armor. People want a repeatable way to farm for Azerite armor, and Blizzard does not want to give that to them. Blizzard's philosophy on Azerite armor is so disconnected from what the average player wants, it's embarrassing. And this is something that's manifested itself everywhere. It's manifested itself with Titan Forging, with the fact that they buffed Heroic Gahoon after one guild had killed it, and other guilds didn't want to kill Heroic Gahoon because they thought they'd get banned for exploiting it. It was evidence. There's a number of different reasons. It feels like Blizzard, they don't know how to communicate with players. They don't know what the players want. And many of the developers think that the players are wrong in what they want. Are the players wrong sometimes? Yes, they are. But it seems like in Battle for Azeroth, almost everything is completely contradictory with what the player base seems to want. As I said, this all goes back to that seed of communication. It all goes back to that seed of the developers being able to have a constructive line of communication with the player base, and that does not exist right now. That needs to happen. The Q&As are great. I really appreciate them, but we need to have more than a Q&As. We need to have something that's more holistic and something that players can see and they can participate in if they have a good idea. I understand that Blizzard's Azerite armor ideas, they didn't necessarily go through in the same way, but at the same that people wanted them to. But I think that they can be reconciled if players are able to have a line of communication with the developers. And it just seems right now that it's this adversarial thing between the developers wanting to hold things back from players and the players wanting things. There's got to be some middle ground here, and I think that Blizzard's doing a very, very bad job in navigating that middle ground. Obviously, some of it's been okay, but most of the decisions that they've made have been completely backwards. What's frustrating to me about all of this is that I feel like everything that we do, everything that we talk about, everything that we say, everything we write down, everything that we think, it falls on deaf ears. It doesn't really matter at all. And I understand that, developers are they're not obligated to listen to any of us. Of course not. But man, it's like people wanted honor to be account-wide in Legion, and they made it account-wide in Battle for Azeroth. Like, why didn't they do that in Legion? Were the players wrong in Legion? No, obviously not, because Blizzard changed it, and I would consider it a positive change. There are a lot of examples of Blizzard holding back quality of life increases for arbitrary periods of time in order to artificially increase the amount of time that you're playing the game. Or just because they don't want to admit that they're wrong. I think that's another big component to it as well. The shaman thing is another good example, right? Blizzard, I feel like they want to make it to where you can never make a bad choice in the game, but there are still a few bad choices that you can make, such as rolling a shaman. They suck. They're not good. Like, are they terrible? Are they the worst thing in the entire world? No, they're not. They're still okay, but the fact that they're underperforming so far below other healers and other DPS makes them not appealing as much than other classes. And the big difference between a game like WoW and a game like Diablo 3 is the fact that players have to choose to play with you. And whenever you create systems where players are artificially and you create these different power dynamics where one player is a lot better and one player is a lot worse, what happens is the players that are artificially limited, right? They don't get the right Titan Forges. They don't get Azerite armor out of their box. They don't get what they need to have. And instead, they just sit there and they don't get invited to groups. That doesn't feel good. And again, I'm going to go back to the feeling good part. There are so many things in the game that do not feel good. And I think that's really the main focus. I feel like, to a certain extent, this might be because I'm getting older, right? But whenever I read entire forum threads about people telling me that, or not telling me, but saying the exact same thing that I'm thinking, I feel like this isn't just, I'm drifting away from the game because I'm getting a bit older. I feel like it's a fundamental problem. I don't feel that much older in terms of the things that I want, and I feel like there's a lot of people that think the exact same way. There are just all these really, really I wrote some of these down. These are dumb decisions that Blizzard has made that I feel like doesn't make any sense, right? The legacy loot system. It does not work with WoD dungeons. Blizzard considers WoD dungeons. They consider WoD dungeons current content until you got up to 111. It doesn't work with Legion dungeons and Legion raids until you get up to 121. So even though somebody's able to solo Gul'dan at this point, and solo I think kill Jaden as well, somehow Legion content is still current content. Why would you make it to where you can't just use legacy loot in the Legion raids? It makes absolutely no sense. And it's the same with like not being able to swap your gear in Mythic Plus. Like, what is the value of that? Why is that good? What does that add to the game? The idea that taking away choices adds more choices, I think, is valid to an extent, but not in this circumstance. I don't feel like there's been anything positive about that at all. The Master Loot thing, I think, is probably the biggest issue that I had with Battle for Azeroth, and it made me lose the most amount of faith in Blizzard, because it made it obvious to me that their philosophy in terms of creating the game is completely different than my philosophy in terms of what's meaningful and what matters in a group environment. It seems like almost Blizzard doesn't want people to play with each other, and they're creating so many other examples and ways for people to have a single player experience. The idea that being able to participate in a boss kill means that you earn the loot in the same way that somebody who maybe earned that boss kill by progressing on it for 200 kills before you got there, that you guys are on the exact same footing by something that Blizzard created is, I mean, that's terrible. And it's completely untrue. And on top of that, whenever I made the previous video about this, what I said would happen has come true. Less people are wanting to raid. Raiding, at least from my perspective, is at a pretty, I don't know if it's at an all-time low, but it's definitely pretty low. There's a lot of people that don't feel motivated for it. And all this, all the personal loot thing has done is it's created even more negative social interactions. So for an example, in like a lot of guilds nowadays, like Mythic raiding guilds, you are required to, if you get an item that is an upgrade for you, trade it to the Master Looter and then have your item be redistributed to the entire raid. Now, obviously, like that might not really make sense, but if you're playing in an environment, in a group environment where, you know, you want to make sure the group is the best as possible, that's obviously the best thing to do. But it feels even worse for you to have to trade away an item that you received just because of the way that Blizzard made it. And I feel like, yes, obviously this is an emergent player behavior, but the issue is that Blizzard has they have no foresight on these kinds of things. They have no way to be able to predict emergent player behavior nowadays. There are very few times that Blizzard has put something in the game and the player base has responded to it in the way that I think Blizzard intended. Just the Azerite armor is just completely ridiculous example for that. The class design in Battle for Azeroth is, I think, overall worse than Legion, just in general. We don't have artifact weapons anymore. We don't have legendaries anymore. We don't have any new talents. We basically just lost things in Battle for Azeroth, and the only thing that's been replaced with is Azerite armor. Oh, we've also lost tier sets as well. And, like, is the game better without tier sets nowadays? I don't think so. I think another example of is the game better than... Reforging has been out of the game for 2 expansions now. Can anyone who's watching this video honestly say that the game has gotten any better with Reforging gone? No. Has it improved the player experience at all? No, I don't think so at all. All of these different things that they've taken out of the game have not made the game experience better at all, but they, for some reason, they fit into Blizzard's grand scheme, grand design of the game that apparently is not shared by the majority of the player base. I don't know what to do, and the fact is that I've re-recorded this video a number of times because it just gets so long, and I get halfway through the video and I realize that, oh my God, I haven't even gotten done talking about half of the stuff. I don't want to make an hour-long video, but it seems like if I was going to go through every single thing that's wrong with Battle for Azeroth, it'd have to be like 2 or 3 hours long. And I don't know what to do, honestly. I really don't. Like, PvP to a certain extent is okay. Blizzard is very, very slow with making changes. Death Knights are completely terrible, etc. Right? But for the most part, I think they've done an okay job with PvP. With PvE, like Mythic Plus dungeons, I feel like they're just not fun for me. Like, I mean, I'll just be honest, they're just not fun. Like, there's just so much more trash in the Mythic Plus dungeons nowadays than there were in Legion. And also combining that with like I don't like the GCD change. Honestly, I really feel like it hasn't made the game better. And all of like my class does not feel fluid. It does not feel fun to play. And I think a big part of that is because the GCD change. And I just think like the added trash and the playability of my class being limited based off of, having to use an entire GCD to use cooldown, etc. Having that in Legion and being able to have that fluid gameplay and then going from that into Battle for Azeroth where everything is much more clunky. As I said before, it really feels like we're going from level 110 to 100 and not up to 120. It's very disappointing, guys. It really is. Now, I'm still enjoying the expansion in a lot of different ways, but I feel like I could be enjoying it in a lot more ways. And I hope that if there's any takeaway from this video at all, it's the idea that Blizzard really needs to find a way to better solicit feedback from the community. They need to find a way to listen to the community and hear what they have to say. And at a certain point, whenever enough people are saying it, it can't necessarily be wrong. But what Blizzard needs to do is not necessarily look at what players want, but look at what they need. Stop giving people what they want. Stop giving them free items. Stop giving them free stuff. Don't just, we're going to give them the emissary, the 370 emissary reward. That's great that they're doing that, but it doesn't solve the problem of Azerite armor. Blizzard is putting bandages on. It's like you cut your leg off and Blizzard puts a bandage over the bone. It doesn't make a difference at all. They're addressing symptoms and not the disease. I really think that this needs to change, and I think that Blizzard needs to find a better way to communicate with the player base on a more consistent level, not just Q&As randomly, not just random Twitters, but they need to figure out a way, and I think they should create a forum on their official website to solicit this feedback and to solicit these suggestions and to hopefully give people the opportunity to make the game that they all love better, because that's what we really all want to do. And I want to end the video and say this, that I played World of Warcraft ever since 2006. I had just turned 16 years old, and it was one of the best experiences. Like, that year that I started playing WoW was one of the best years of my life, and one of the reasons for that was because of WoW. I don't care if people think that's stupid or not, because it's true. It made me feel so good. I loved it, and I love this game, man. Like, I don't want to see it just fall into the hands of people who are apathetic and just divisive and angry and disgruntled with the player base. Man, like, it can be so much more than that. It really can. And I think that they can do that. I really do. But right now, they haven't been doing a very good job. The player base is not necessarily wrong all the time. Sometimes they are, but it's not always. The developers and the players should work together, not work against each other. And communication is the first step for that happening. And I really hope that it does. There's nothing that I want more than for the game to do well and for it to succeed. But a lot of changes need to happen for that to be the case. And Battle for Azeroth, in a lot of ways, has taken a lot of steps backwards and not forwards. So Blizzard not only has to, regain the ground that they had gotten with Legion, but also move forward from that. I think a lot of people are waking up. They're realizing like this Titan forging and war forging and, these just arbitrary systems that are being created to extend your game time. These things are not fun. These things are not enjoyable for them. And I hope that Blizzard realizes that. Give us another way. Give us something to where your character's power is not defined by just getting really lucky. It's not fun. Nobody enjoys this. It's not fulfilling to randomly get a Titan forge. It's exciting for 5 minutes, but then you don't care about it afterwards. There are items that I remember that I earned in Wrath of the Lich King Burning Crusade Classic WoW that I still remember today. I don't remember what my highest Titan Forge item was in Legion. I have no idea. I don't remember what my Warforged socketed items were in WoD because they didn't matter. I don't know, man. I don't know. I felt like I had to make this video, and let me know what you guys think. Did I miss some stuff? Am I wrong? Let me know. I know that there's a lot of people that are happy with BFA. I get that. Good. But that doesn't mean that everybody who's not happy with it is wrong. And I want everybody to be happy, not just some people. So anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I've got. Thank you very much for watching. And like, comment, and subscribe.